Welcome to the Fall 2014 Intramural Dodgeball Captains video as a part of the University of Iowa Intramural Sports. This video will give you an overview on some things going on in the Intramural Sports program, including rules and regulations of our program and rules of the sport of Intramural Dodgeball. The first thing we want you to know about is our eCheckup to Go program. Through this incentive, teams in intramural sports can get their registration fees refunded to them in full. To do so, a team must have 75% of the players on the team's final roster complete the assessment, send the verification to Intramural Sports in order to receive a refund of its entry fee. You have until the end of the dodgeball playoffs to get this done. 75% of your team's final roster complete the assessment. And details are available on the Intramural Sports website. On that website, there are instructions of how to do every step of the eCheckup to Go program in order to qualify for the incentive. The Intramural Sports staff is made up of the Director of Intramural Sports, Tommy Shore, Graduate Assistants Drew Dunlay and Clint Angus, as well as Initiatives and Recruitment Graduate Assistant Taylor Ulrich, and 9 student supervisors that you will see on site while you play your intramural dodgeball games. If at any time you have any questions about intramural sports, intramural dodgeball, or any intramural sports, please ask one of the intramural sports staff and we will get you an answer as best we can, as soon as we can, in order to make sure you know everything that's going on in intramural sports. Some responsibilities we have of you all as team captains are first and foremost to make sure all your teammates are eligible. We don't want to deal with having to forfeit any matches due to eligibility issues. So if you take care of that on the front end, make sure eligibility status doesn't change amongst any of your team members. We'll be set to go for that. Additionally, we need you to make sure your teammates know sport and program rules and regulations. It is not an excuse for someone who breaks a rule to simply say that they didn't know that rule or that policy of our program. So to that end, we need you to make sure that they know all the rules for our program and intramural dodgeball. And if we need to contact you from the office for any reason, if we need to contact your team, you will serve as our team contact. Some rules changes for intramural dodgeball this year. In case you played last year, there are going to be a few differences. The players may be added to team rosters up until 15 minutes prior to the scheduled match time. Again, that's done on imleagues.com and can be done up to 15 minutes prior to a scheduled match time in order to be eligible to play in those matches that night. Players may check in at the game site with either a valid state-issued photo ID or a University of Iowa ID card. Both are acceptable this year. Forfeit fines are no longer going to be refunded should you be subject to one of those. And this year, teams will consist of 5 players on the court at a time with no gender restrictions. In the past, it was 6 players on the court at one time. We have reduced that to 5, although there is a minimum of 4 players needed to start a match. If you're going for Buffalo Wild Wings points in the co-rec division, you must have 2 males and 2 females playing at all times in every game, in every match, in order to qualify for those points, and the final participant can be of either gender. A few more rules changes. Each game starts with 4 dodgeballs, and each team will start with 2 dodgeballs in its possession. Each court will have different color dodgeballs so we can distinguish which balls go to which court. If a player goes out of bounds other than the designated player, as in Rule 510, that player is out. That is more directly defined in our rules. Rule 510 it talks about the ball retriever. Because we are playing on a volleyball court in the North Gym and main deck, the dodgeballs will go out of the playing area. So until someone is eliminated from your team for that game, your team can have 1 player designated to retrieve dodgeballs that go out of bounds. That person still cannot cross the midline, but that person can go out of bounds, retrieve a dodgeball, and come right back in. Once a person is eliminated from that game, that person and all subsequent eliminated players from your team become dodgeball retrievers. And finally, no part of a player's body can touch outside or on the boundary line. An arm can go over or a leg can go over the boundary line as long as it stays in the air and does not touch the ground. If any part of a player's body touches on or over the boundary line, that player is out. IamLeagues.com is our registration website that you are somewhat familiar with at this point, as you have made it this far in the registration process. Once Dodgeball gets going, if there are any league announcements we need to make, we will do those via IamLeagues.com. Through this website, you can add players to your roster. And once registration is complete, we will make schedules, and those will be posted on IamLeagues.com. For all of our sports and events, as a part of the University of Iowa Intramural Sports, we post sport rules and information sheets on IamLeagues.com. To find those, you just go to a sports homepage on the website, hover over the sport icon, and click on handbooks and manuals, and find the information you need there. And once we get going with games, we will update standings and brackets daily on IamLeagues.com as matches are completed. At the University of Iowa, we expect all participants to display good sportsmanship whenever they are competing in an intramural sport. Any participant who may participate in a fight will be suspended from all recreational activities for at least one calendar year. That's not just intramural sports, that's sport clubs, fitness programs, aquatics, everything under the recreational services umbrella. And those incidents will be reported to the Dean of Students' office. If a participant is ejected, that person is required to meet with the intramural staff along with you as the team captain. The ejected participant and the team captain are both ineligible to participate until after the meeting, and the ejected participant will be suspended at least one additional match following the time of the meeting. In intramural dodgeball, matches are officiated by the participants, and our participants are expected to resolve conflicts on their own. We do not have dodgeball officials as a part of the University of Iowa Intramural Sports. There will be supervisors on site that can clarify rules questions, but they will not make a determination on whether a player is out, or whether the ball hit that player, judgment calls, things like that. If teams cannot reach a resolution, the match will be forfeit by one or both teams at the supervisor's discretion. Again, we expect mature behavior, sportsmanship, and fair play as a part of our intramural dodgeball leagues. Throughout the season, you can add players to your team roster like we talked about. The daily deadline is 15 minutes prior to a scheduled match time in order to participate in that night's matches. And this process continues until the quarterfinal round of the playoffs, at which time rosters lock 15 minutes prior to a team's quarterfinal playoff match. So you can continue to add players until the quarterfinal round of the playoffs, at which time rosters are locked and you can no longer add players to your team roster. Again, like we talked about, check IamLeagues.com frequently to make sure your roster is current and has no errors. There are changes in eligibility that happen throughout a semester or a year. People leave a job at the university or drop classes or what have you, and their eligibility changes. But please make sure that you are checking for any inconsistencies or any errors in that regard. If you need to drop someone from your team, you can do so. To do that, you must submit a player drop request form. They are available on our website at recserve.uiowa.edu. They're available on iamleagues.com, and they're available in our office at 216 Fieldhouse. Once you complete that form, you can either scan it and email it to us at intramural-sports@uiowa.edu, or you can drop it in our roster drop box located outside of our office in E216 Fieldhouse. As we talked about this year, there will be 5 players on the court at a time, no gender restrictions. Unless you're going for Buffalo Wild Wings playoff points, you must have 2 males, 2 females in every game of every match in order to qualify for those. And again, you need at least 4 players to start a match. University of Iowa students, faculty, and staff members are all eligible for participation in our program, as well as spouses or legally married partners of students or faculty and staff. The only restriction on spouses is that they must play on the same team as their eligible spouse member. A participant in intramural dodgeball can only play on one team. If a player enters a match on a second team, that player is ineligible for the remainder of the season, and a team with an ineligible player on the roster will forfeit any matches in which that player participates. So again, make sure you do not have any ineligible participants on your team. Once you arrive at the game site, you can check in with the supervisor prior to your match. You must check in with the supervisor prior to your match, and you can do so by presenting a state-issued photo ID or a university ID card. Again, you have to be on the roster in order to participate in that match. If you do not have an ID card, you cannot play. There are no exceptions to this. So, captains, remind your players on your team to bring a state-issued photo ID or a university ID for every match of intramural dodgeball. If there's anybody using fake IDs or using an ID of someone that is not them, that person is subject to suspension from intramural sports, and we also reserve the right to discipline the individual supplying the ID as well as the team captain. And any of these incidents will be reported to the Dean of Students office, as that is a violation of the Code of Student Conduct. If a team is not ready within 10 minutes of a scheduled match time, that team will forfeit. We have tightly scheduled matches. We need to make sure that they all get going as close to on time as possible. And we want teams to show up. That's why we schedule these. The opponents want to play the matches, all that stuff. So we do have a forfeit time, and we do have a forfeit fine for teams that do not show up in order to play their scheduled matches. That fine is $15 for intramural dodgeball, and that will not be refunded. It will be charged to the team captain's U-bill and not refunded. If you know you can't make a match, you can default. In order to do that, you must declare that by 2 p.m. the day of the match for a weekday match. You can do that by contacting the intramural sports office at 335-9292 or emailing graduate assistant Clint Angus at clinton-angus@uiowa.edu. The first time you default, there's no fine. Thank you for letting us know. We can make arrangements accordingly, let the team know they don't need to show up, etc., etc. The second time, again, we want matches to happen, so if it happens again, there will be a 25% default fine charged to the team captain's U-bill, and that fine is 25% of the registration fee cost. If there's a third default, as team captain, you will be fined to your U-bill 50% of the registration fee, and those fines are non-refundable. If there's a misinterpretation or misapplication of a rule, a protest can be made. Again, there are no officials in intramural dodgeball, so the only time you can protest something is if a rule is misapplied. You have to call a timeout immediately, bring the supervisor over. The supervisor will make a ruling. If you still don't agree with that ruling, you can submit a protest form to the intramural office by 12 p.m. the first business day following the match, along with $5, and that protest will be heard by the administrative staff. If that protest is upheld, meaning you are correct, we will go back and play the match from the time of the protest, the misinterpretation or misapplication of the rule. If your protest is denied, the match will stand as was played out that previous night. Once we get going with intramural dodgeball and registration is complete, we will post the schedules on imleagues.com. That'll be done by Wednesday, November 12th, and games will begin on Monday, November 17th. Those games will happen at the Fieldhouse North Gym the week of November 17th through 20th. That's a Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. And after Thanksgiving break, we'll resume play of intramural dodgeball with our playoffs, and those will take place on the main deck of the Fieldhouse. So, same building, a little different course we'll be using for the playoffs. The Hawkeye Interdorm CAN bus route makes a stop near the Fieldhouse at Reno Hall if you're coming from the east side of campus, and it goes from west side to east side, picking up at Slater when you are done with your matches. For intramural dodgeball, all pool play matches will be played on the same night during the time frame and the day you select during registration. So if you select Monday early all your matches will be played on that Monday, November 17th, during that early time frame. Once we get to playoffs, that will change a little bit. The top 2 teams in each division will qualify for the playoffs, and those teams must have good sportsmanship to make the playoffs, and those teams will be seeded according to their win-loss records based on the pool play. The playoff matches will begin on Monday, December 1st, and will take place through Thursday, December 5th, beginning at 8 p.m. each of those nights. Again, it doesn't matter what night you played your pool play matches when it comes to playoff matches being scheduled, because as teams continue to advance, we have to utilize the different nights of the week. But those games and those matches will not start prior to 8 p.m. on any of those playoff nights. Following pool play, the week November 17th through 20th, we'll post playoff brackets on imleagues.com on Friday, November 21st, for those matches that start on December 1st, that first Monday following Thanksgiving break. Jewelry is not permitted in intramural dodgeball. This includes any visible piercings, rings, necklaces, bracelets, anklets, rubber bands, all that stuff. It's a safety hazard and is not permitted to be worn in intramural sports. That includes bandanas, as that is a safety hazard as well. If any players are participating with any jewelry, it is not allowed. The only exception to that is a medical alert bracelet or necklace being worn, in which case it must be taped down. Some rules of the match. Again, it's the team captain's responsibility to make sure the team members are aware of the rules. The first teams to win 6 games in a match will be the winner of the match. So it's basically a best of 11 series of games of intramural dodgeball. Following each match, the winning team is responsible for reporting scores to the intramural supervisor on duty. The supervisor on duty isn't watching every match and keeping score of every match, so they have no way of knowing who won, who lost, things like that. So make sure after your match you report those scores. Each team will start every game of every match with 2 dodgeballs, and like we talked about before, each team can have a designated ball retriever to start the game. She may collect dodgeballs as long as no one on his or her team is out. Once a player is eliminated from that game, that player then becomes the ball retriever, as well as any subsequent players that get out of that game. Players hit with a illegally thrown ball are out, and teammates cannot be saved by catching the ball after a teammate is hit, things like that. If you're hit and you do not catch, you are out. If you catch a dodgeball thrown by an opponent, the person that threw it is out on the other team, unless that ball is considered out of play if it hit the floor or a basketball hoop or a wall or something like this. Along those lines, a ball becomes dead if it hits the ceiling, floor, walls, the bleachers in the North Gym, a basketball hoop, the net on the main deck, touches out of bounds, or if hits an opposing player, crosses the middle line in the air, back onto your side after hitting that said player. So you can't throw it, have it hit somebody else, and then have it come back to you and be caught. That's just a dead ball once it comes back across that midline. To keep games moving, if a player holds the ball for more than 10 seconds, that player must roll the ball to the opposing team's side of play. If the player doesn't forfeit the ball, she will be out. There are no headshots allowed in intramural dodgeball. A player hit in the head will be allowed to stay in the game unless that player ducked to dodge the ball. So if the ball is thrown waist high and the player is ducking and gets hit in the head, that's not going to result in that player being safe. And players who duck and are hit in the head are out. Teams will use single-colored dodgeballs provided by IM Sports, and again, the 2 courts going on at the same time will have different colored dodgeballs during their matches, so you can keep track of which dodgeballs go to which court. As a part of our intramural sports program, we have the annual Buffalo Wild Wings Intramural Sports Points Championship. What this is an opportunity for teams to earn points for every sport or event in which they participate. So In every sport, based off finishing position, teams are awarded points towards the Buffalo Wild Wings Intramural Sports Points Championship. If you keep the same team name throughout both semesters, you can continue to accumulate points for every sport in which you participate. At the end of the year, we will award points championships in men's, women's, fraternity, sorority, and co-rec divisions, and those go to the teams that have accumulated the most points throughout the year. So it's an incentive to try and continue to participate in as many intramural sports as possible and make a run at this points championship. The winning teams in each of those 5 divisions will receive a championship trophy, a $100 gift certificate to Buffalo Wild Wings in downtown Iowa City for your team to use for non-alcoholic purchases, and that team, each of those 5 teams, will receive Buffalo Wild Wings Intramural Sports Points Championship t-shirts. Now that you've made it this far in your intramural dodgeball registration, we want to make sure you know all the steps to completing your registration. So after you complete the viewing of this video, you need to pass the captain's quiz by getting 20 answers correct out of 20 questions. Once you've done that, you can start adding players to your team, and you must meet the minimum player requirement, which for intramural dodgeball is 4, in order to move on to the next step, which is paying the registration fee. Once you have the minimum player requirement, you can pay the registration fee online through imleagues.com via PayPal, and once you pay that registration fee, you can select your day and time for your pool play matches that week of November 17th through 20th. All of this must be completed before registration ends at 11:59 p.m. on Tuesday, November 11th, but pre-registration starts at 8 a.m. on Monday, November 3rd. So you have that week to do everything through paying the registration fee, and then once registration officially opens at 8 a.m. on November 10th, you can select your day and time and be set to go with your intramural dodgeball registration. If you need more players for your team, or you are interested in intramural dodgeball and do not have a team, you can attend the free agent meeting that will be held on Tuesday, November 11th at 2 p.m. in the Field House, Room 201. At this meeting, captains have the opportunity to pick up extra players, or free agents can meet each other to get connected to complete a roster and get registered for intramural dodgeball. Every year, Intramural Sports has a Friday night series of events, and there are several opportunities throughout each semester to participate in these events. The Friday night series events that we still have remaining for the fall semesters: Canoe Battleship, a very popular and new sport or event that we have added to our schedule in the last year. That will take place in December. And in the spring semester, we will hold wiffle ball, inner tube water polo, late night softball, volleyball, and Canoe Battleship, all as Friday night series events. These are free events. They're fun events, and they take place on Friday nights throughout the semester. That concludes the intramural dodgeball captains video for the fall 2014 semester. If you have any questions about anything intramural sports related, please give us a call at 319-335-9292 or email us at intramural-sports@uiowa.edu. And as always, you can friend us on Facebook at Iowa Intramurals and follow us on Twitter at Iowa Intramurals to stay up to date on upcoming registration deadlines and anything that's taken place in the intramural sports program. Thank you for watching this video, and best of luck to you during your intramural dodgeball season.